Okay, the next one is selection and grouping. Actually, selection statements, otherwise we call conditional statements. Uh, Basically, conditional statements are used to perform different actions based on different conditions, right? So, what are the selection statement or conditional statements that we have in JavaScript? If, if else, nested if else, and switch cases, right? And then next one is grouping, right? So in grouping there are two main loops, while loop and for loop, and in addition to that we have break and continue statements inside the loops, right? Actually in this course I'm going to discuss only if else and nested if else, right? Or we can study all those things in programming course, right? That is selection statements and loops, right? Okay. First one is if statement, right? Basically if statements are used to execute some code, or we call set of codes, only if a specified condition is true. That means we can define a particular condition. So if it is true, we can ask to execute a set of codes, right? So this is the syntax. We can say if, and then within bracket we can define a condition, right? So based on that condition, so if it is true, we can define set of codes uh, to be executed, right? So those codes should be defined as a block, right? So block. So this block is represented by using open and closing curly bracket. So inside the open and closing curly bracket, we can define a set of codes, right? So we call this is particular block, right? So we can insert the code to be executed in here, right? So that's about the if statement, right? Next one is if else statement, right? So basically if else statements are used to execute some code if the given condition is true, and another set of code if the condition is false, right? So this is how we use it. We can say if, and then within bracket we can define set of within bracket we can define a condition, right? So if it is true, we can define a particular block, one block. That means inside block, we can insert a set of codes to be executed, right? So next, after that, we can say else, then we can define another block to be executed if the condition is not true, or we call false, all right? That is if, here we can set a condition. So if this condition is true, we can insert a set of codes into this block to be executed. Else we can define another block, then here we can insert another set of statements to be executed if the given condition is false, right? Next one is a nested if statement, right? So in here we can use this statement to select one of many blocks of code to be executed. That is, here we can define a number of conditions. All right. So in earlier we have only one condition, but in here we can define more than one condition. So for example, in here, if here we can define a one condition, and then if it is true, then we can uh, insert set of codes to be executed into this block. Else we can define another condition by using if statement. Else if, that is, if this is false, then we can check another condition, all right? So if it is true, then we can define the block to be executed using set of codes. Then if this is true, these codes are executed. That means a code which is in the second block, right? So if it is false, we can define another condition, all right, using else if, within bracket we can define condition, and then we can define another block to be executed. Else we can define another block to be executed, all these conditions are false, then this block will be executed, right? So let's see a simple example, right? So in here I have a variable called marks. I define variable called var marks, right? Then I assign value 60 for the marks variable, right? Then I check in here, if marks greater than 50, then I insert a code document.write within bracket pass. So what I need, if marks greater than 50, I want to print pass, right? Otherwise, I want to print fail. So this is how we use if else for that particular requirement, right? If, then here within bracket I check the condition marks greater than 50. So if marks greater than 50, then I need to print pass. So this is how we print pass, right? So I insert this code inside this particular block, if block, right? Then else means if this condition is false, then I define another block which contain document.write fail, right? That means if this condition is not true, that is, if it is false, then I need to print fail, right? Okay, let's see in example how to do that, right? So I have a uh, uh, basic structure of the HTML file called basic HTML. I open that, okay, and I use this one for illustrate that example. Okay, then what I need, I define variable called var marks, right? If I want, I can take the value from the use input, right? For the time being, I'll just say 60, right? And then here, what is my condition? If, then I say marks greater than 50. So if it is greater than 50, then I can define like this, right? I can define document.write. So here I define the say pass. So not only one particular statement, I can define any number of statements, right? Document dot say right, say good, right? In here I have several statements, say good, right? So if it is false, so right now this is true according to this value, but if it is say 40, then this condition is false. 40 is greater than 50, that is false, all right? So if it is false, I can say else, then I can define another block which contain different messages, right? So in my case, I need to print say document dot sorry write, then I can say fail, right? So in here I say document dot write, say try again, all right? Okay, let's see. So I save this one as a 8.html, right? So this is my web page. Okay. So according to this input, according to this value, it should be false. So therefore, it's a failed. Try again. All right. So if I need, I can insert say break tag, right? Otherwise, also all in one particular line. Okay. And I refresh this, right? If I change this, say 60, now 60 is greater than 50. So that is a condition. Actually, that is comparison condition, right? Compare these two values. Marks is 60, 60 greater than 50. That is true. Then this block will be executed. All right. So I save this and refresh. Now these codes are executed, right? So if it is less than 50 is 49, then fail, try again. If I need, I can use say greater than or equal. Then if it is 50, this is true because marks is not a greater than, but that is equal to 50. Then say pass and good. Okay, so that's about if else statement. So if you want, you can use a nested if, right? In grading system, that means in your grading system, if marks greater than 75, that is A. If marks greater than 65, that is B. If it is greater than 55 or 50, that is C, something like that. In that case, we can use say nested if, right? Nested if. So I use the same code, right? Say I save say 9.html, all right? Okay, and then I delete this. Okay, now say marks. I'm going to use the grading system. Then first one is say marks greater than or equal say 75, right? So if it is greater than 75, then I can say you have a pass. See, so for that I mean I maximize this document dot say right say a. If I need, you can say you can insert another code as well. Say document dot say right. Say very good. But I need to explain. So not only uh, insert one statement within a block, right? So that's the thing what I need to point out. So that's why I insert two statements. You can insert any number of statements, right? So not only one statement, right? So in here I use the break tag as well. All right, okay. Then next one is, so if it is true, that is if marks greater than 75, these set of statements will be executed. If it is false, in grading system I have to check another condition. That's why I use else if, because I need to check another condition. If else say marks greater than or equals 6y, so that is the second condition. That is, if it is greater than 75, I can just say A. If it is false, that is less than 75, I can't say fail. I can't say B, because less than 75 means it may be 10, or it may be 20, or it may be 40, or even it may be a 70. So that is less than 75. Therefore, I have to check another condition. So that's why I use another block. All right. In that case, for the time saving, I copy the same uh, print message, and then here document.write the pass is B. Just I say good. All right. So if it is false, that is marks less than 765, then I can check another condition. I have to check another condition. Then I say else if say marks greater than or equal say 50. So if it is greater than or equal 50, then I can say another message. Right? So in here I say a document.write say cpass. Right? So here I can say say not bad, say fair. All right. Then if it is greater than 50, so greater than or equal 50, I can say C and fair. Then I can say oh, if it is less than 50, I have to check the marks greater than 35. Then I have to check another condition. Else if, then I say marks greater than or equal 35. So if it is greater than or equal 35, then I can say you have S pass. S. All right. Say S. Just I can say pass. All right. Credit pass in here. Credit pass likewise. Distinction right? Likewise, this is credit. So if it is greater than or equals 35, I can say yes and pass. And then if it is less than 35, then I don't need to check another condition. Therefore, I put else, and inside the else tag, I can say just you have failed. You have failed. All right. So in here we can say fail. Here we can say try again. So you can use any number of statements within a block, or you can say any relevant message. All right. Then I save this. Okay. Then 9. So now the marks is 50, that is not greater than 75, not greater than 65, greater than or equal 50, therefore this block will be executed, right, according to our marks, value for the marks variable. So if it is 40, then that is S, because so this is false, so this condition is false, 40 greater than 75 false, 40 greater than 65 false, 40 greater than 50 is false, 40 greater than 35 is pass. All right. So say it is 90. So if it is 90, now just A. The first one is true. So if it is 70, not greater than 75, it is greater than 65. Therefore, that is B. Something like that. So according to the given value for the marks, right, the relevant block will be executed, right? So if you want, you can take the value for the marks from the as a user input, right? So now you know how to take user input using a pop-up box, all right? So how can you use? So just we can here the marks variable is here. Here I define the variable marks. Then I can say marks. Then I can take user input, say using prompt pop-up box prompt, and then can say enter marks. So that's the message. So then here I put default value is 0. Likewise, and I refresh this. Here I'll take use input. So say 80. So if it is 80 greater than 75, then this block will be executed. Right. So I refresh this. So say 68. So then not greater than 75. This is false. Now this is true. Then this block will be executed. Now what I have done, I take a value for the marks as a user input like this. So likewise, you can use conditional statements in JavaScript. All right. Okay. So that's about the conditional statements. And then next one is functions. Right. How to use functions in JavaScript. Right. So actually, functions are the reusable groups of statements. That means if you want to use a set of statements again and again, right? So we can define that set of statements as a function. All right. So to define function, there's a keyword called function, right? So how can we define the function? So this is how we define the function. You can use the function keyword function, and then you can set a function name, any name. Then here we can pass any parameters, right? Then we can define set of codes as a block, So inside this open and close curly bracket block, we can define set of statements, right? So if there is a return value from this function, at the end of the function, you can return that value, right? Okay, so let's see example, right? So here I define a function called display message. Display msg means message. So you can define function name in here. It may be any name, but you have to use the meaningful name. Function display msg. So in here I insert code for alert message, alert, and then message. Then I close the function. Then if you call to this function, this will be executed. So let's see how to call this function. So in order to close this one, call this function, I use a particular button, right? Input button. Then when you click on this button, so you know how to use that button. Input, type this button, then value is the label for the button, click, and there's a event called onClick for the button. OnClick means when you click on that button, then it will be called to this function. We call this calling function. Right? Display message, I call to this function, then this block will be executed. That means this function will be executed. Right? So that's how we define the function and call to the function. So let's see. Right? And new HTML file, HTML, and closing HTML, and header section, closing head, and body. This is the body section. Alright, so inside the header section, I insert the JavaScript. Script type, let's say text JavaScript. Script. So in here I define function. I save this one as say function1, function1.html. So in here I define the function, say function, say display message. So in here I don't have any parameters, so therefore just say display msg open and close button. Right, so here we don't have any parameter, so here I define a block. Inside the block I say alert. All right, this is JavaScript function. So in here, so now this is function, so we have to call this function. So in order to call this function, I close the body. Here I use input button. You know how to use input button in HTML. So here input type is button, and then value is the label. Say here I say click, and on click is the event. And when you click on this button, then I call to this function display msg. So you have to use the correct name. Here I use display msg, so you have to use the same name in here. Otherwise, this will not be called to this function, right? Okay. Here in header section we have JavaScript function, and here we have button. Okay, let's see. Okay, function one. Now you can see. So this is our JavaScript code. Right. Here we have function. Here button for the calling function. Then here we have button. When you click here, it will be called to this JavaScript function. Right. So here the function contains the alert message. So likewise, we can define the function and call to that function. Right. Okay. Now I am going to define a function for adding two numbers. Right. So in script section, I define a function called function add numbers. Then I'm going to add two numbers. So therefore, here there should be two parameters, right? Two parameters. So two variables should be there in order to take two inputs, right? Now I'm going to define function to add two numbers, right? So therefore, here I define two variables. We call two parameters, right? So here I have two parameters x and y, and then in function block I define say x plus y assigned to variable sum, right? So actually this is execute to right to left, x plus y assigned to sum. Then after adding that, I return the value of sum, right? Here I return sum. So that's about the block. So here I take two inputs from prompt box, prompt pop-up box. I take prompt and then assign to num1, and then I take another value and then assign to num2, and then here I pass these two values to already defined function, right? So this is how we pass it. Function name is add numbers. Then I use the same name add numbers. Then num1 and num2 pass to this function, right? So here num1 assigned to x, num1 assigned to y, right? So no need to use the same name. It's called num1, num1 and num2 inside the function. Inside the function, we should have two parameters, right? Because here you pass two values, right? Num1 and num2. Those two values should be taken from the function x, y, right? So here num1 got assigned to x, num2 assigned to y. Then here we take the summation x plus y and then return the summation. Then the return value come to here, all right? So the return value should be assigned to another variable. So that's why I define the variable called total. All right. So how it is executing? Taking input for the num1, taking input for the num2, and then those two values are assigned to x and y, because here I call to function at numbers, right? Call to function at numbers with two values. Here we call those argument. Call to add numbers function with two arguments. Those arguments are assigned to the parameters. These are called parameter. In add numbers function, we have two parameters. Then x and y take value from num1 and num2 and take the summation and return the summation value. Then the return value should be assigned to another variable. Here I assign the return value to the variable called total. Then I can print the total. So that's it, right? Now let's see in JavaScript, right? Okay, then I open the notepad and now I have function one document. So I take the same document, right? Then actually I save this one as say function 2 for the time saving, function 2, and then I delete this function and I don't need the input button. Okay, now let's see how to define function. Okay, then I define function for adding two numbers, say function add numbers. Then in order to add two numbers, I need two parameters x and y to take two numbers, and then here what I have done, I define variable called sum and then take x plus y assigned to sum and then return sum, right? Okay, so that's all about the function. And then here I define variable called say num1 to take input. I use the prompt pop-up box, say enter number1, and then default value is null, and then I define say num2 prompt and then enter number2, enter number2, and then default value is null. So that's about the second input, and then I call to say add numbers function. Then I have to pass two values num1 and num2. All right, then the return value from the function should be equal to the say total variable total. Then I can print the value of the total variable, say document dot right. All right, then I can say total. Okay, so that's about the function. Okay, now let's see, right? So I go to the JavaScript and part 2, function 2, right? So this is the first input, say 56, and 65 is the second input. Okay, now these two are added, but those are adding as a string. Those are adding as a string, not as a numbers. Then what we have to do, before adding these two numbers, we have to convert this string into the integer or numeric. All right, because now in this prompt box, these two taken as numbers, but in here these two are added as string. These two are added as string. So before adding this, we have to convert these two into numbers. How can we convert this? Right. So I create another variable, say n1, and then I convert this. There is a function called pass int. Pass int. So using pass int function, we convert x into the n1 and y into the n2. Sorry, n2, and then again pass int. Then I convert x and y into the integer, and then now I'm going to add not x and y, n1 and n2. Then I assign to the variable called sum. Then I return the value sum. Okay. Then I save this one as a function 3.html. Okay. Okay. Then here what I have done, here I pass x and y. Then here I convert x and y into the integers using fast int function. So this is inbuilt function. This is we call built-in function in JavaScript. Here I use fast int function to convert our x and y values into the integers. X convert to the integer, then assign to the variable called n1, y convert to the integer, assigned to the variable n2, then I add n1 and n2 assigned to variable sum, then finally I return the variable called sum. So that is saved as function 3. Okay, then I open function 3, then first input say 55, second one 65. Now 55 plus 65 means 120. Okay, but in here we have only the output. Here we can print input along with the output. How can we print the input? Input is say num1, then concatenate num2, concatenate total. So I refresh this, say 55, 65, 55, 65, 120. So in addition to these values, I can print some symbols. So here I concatenate the symbol called say plus. Sorry, plus, because here 55 plus 65 equal 120. Then here I have to print uh, equal symbol. So this is how we print symbols using double quotation. Right here, num1 concatenate or joint, or we call add this symbol, add num2, add this symbol, add total. Here add means not a numerical add, right? This numerical add, adding as a string. Then I save this, refresh 55, 65, then nice formatting output. Okay, so that's about the functions, right? So that example is there. So that's about the JavaScript basics, right? So you can practice all those things again and again, and then you can improve your JavaScript coding. Okay, thank you very much.